Well, I found Bryce through his two podcasts that I was obsessively listening to. Naked Mormonism and he's co-host of My Book of Mormon podcast. Been listening for a really long time. Somehow missed that he was local. Until I just happened to meet him at the God Awful Movies live show here in town. And we had some fun talking to a really nice Catholic boy on the street and discussing atheism and Satanism and morality and where it comes from and stuff. And he mentioned to me briefly that he was interested in doing something with us, because I obviously mentioned I was a member of the Satanic Temple, and so months later when we started talking about having talks and stuff, I was like, oh, let's just test and see if he really meant that. So I got in touch with him and asked him if he would be willing to give a talk on Satan in Mormonism, and that's how this whole thing started. So I guess I'll let these guys fill in the rest.
Before we start, could we find the quietest fan and turn it on? As a try. Need some kind of
We should have set it up earlier.
A little muggy.
Okay, yeah. All right, that's fine.
Go and do it.
All right.
You got one?
All right.
If that one's plugged in, it's the only one plugged in. Then there's
The presentation won't be too terribly long, and
Okay, that's
fans
fine.
going is terrible for audio anyway, so
Okay.
we'll suffer and sweat through it a little bit down here, and we'll get a little crazy after that. All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining all of us. As you can see, initially Bevan Lilith and I set this up that it was going to be me presenting, but I decided to bring on my my fellow 2x2er here, and we're sporting the tags because we're here to teach you about Mormonism. Maybe by the end of this, we'll all be Mormon Satanists. So we're here to present on Lucifer, the brother of Jesus. Not a lot of people know that, but in Mormon doctrine, Lucifer is the brother of Jesus. Literal brother. So today we're going on a journey together. We're going to watch the birth of a theology in the wild west of Christianity, out of the not garnered or not controlled by large institutional religions dictating approved and unapproved theology. Joseph Smith was born into a chaotic world where religion and magic worked hand in hand to move the tides and forces of nature. The Smith family were practitioners of mesmerism, animal magnetism, scrying, divining, root doctoring, and many other occult practices. On the left we see, this is what's known as the Hiram Smith magic lumen with various occult sigils and symbology. Some people may recognize a fair amount of these magic sigils and these occult homages, because this is all kind of the world, this is the milieu that the Smith family ran in. Joseph particularly, he was really good at scrying, which scrying is using a magic seer stone in a darkened place to hunt for buried treasure or to hunt for whatever it is that your mind most desires at any given time. He would put his rock into a hat, and then he would bury his face in the hat in order to seal out the light and see the magical incantations come through the rock. So that hopefully puts a little bit of a cloud around what we see with the Smith family. They definitely ran in a different kind of circle than most versions of Christianity ran back then, as well as today. Joseph Smith grew up in the Burned Over district. I don't know if anybody has heard of the Burned Over district, but it was this area that where the religious revivals had consumed all of the souls living in the area, and there was no more fuel left to burn, basically. And Joseph attended a number of these revivals and religions, including Methodism, Presbyterianism, and all of this time, he was constantly forming his own theology, soon to be born out of the Book of Mormon. So, Mormons have their set of canon. This is what Mormonism believes in. First and foremost, the King James Bible. And you may say, well, King James Bible, why that one specifically? That's the one that Joseph Smith grew up on. So that's the one that they use primarily. Of course, Joseph Smith, not a lot of people know this as well, he translated his own version of the Bible. But that translation is not used by the Brighamite LDS Church today, for reasons that we won't get into today. One thing to introduce into all of this mix is Joseph was a synthesizer of ideas, and he would be able to grab on and latch onto some cultural meme of his day and be able to expound on it and incorporate that into his own system of beliefs. Well, in 1899, the Rosetta Stone was discovered. And if anyone knows here, the Rosetta Stone that had same decree in 3 different languages, and it was used to translate ancient Egyptian, which is one of the languages that we see here on the picture of the Rosetta Stone. So it was discovered in 1799. That's 6 years before Joseph Smith was born, and for the next 5 decades, scholars, archaeologists, historians toiled and argued and bickered about what the translations meant and the proper way to decipher the languages that are on the Rosetta Stone. So Egyptian was in headlines everywhere as this new hailed scientific discovery because of this Rosetta Stone. So we think that may be some kind of impetus behind the Book of Mormon being translated from Reformed Egyptian. Because, yeah, you gotta switch it up a little bit, make it a little more exciting. It can't just be standard Egyptian, it's Reformed. So that is the next set of Mormon canon. We have the Book of Mormon. Joseph Smith translated it and published it in early 1830. And it was supposedly written on golden plates, and this goes back to the alchemical origins of Joseph Smith's belief system as well. Translated from golden plates, and it was written over a period of 2,500 years by Native Americans on the American continent. And this served to be the genesis of the Book of Mormon. And of course, I'm sure some of you have seen South Park. The translation method. Anyone, show of hands. South Park, almost unanimous. We have common consent. Okay, so South Park, obviously, they did a fantastic job of telling the history of Joseph Smith, and like it or not, that was the method that he used to translate the Book of Mormon. A lot of Mormons are not aware of this because it's a little bit ridiculous. I'm sorry. So, next we have Mormon canon known as the Doctrine and Covenants. Now, the reason that I'm establishing all this, the Mormon canon, is because we're going to walk through where the beliefs come into play of how Lucifer became Jesus' brother, because that's what this whole presentation is centered on. But we have to establish this groundwork of where all these beliefs come from. So we have the Doctrine and Covenants next. Now, the Doctrine and Covenants include various revelations during Joseph Smith's ministry from 1828 to his death in 1844. The first edition of the Book of Commandments was published in 1833, and then it was revised and a whole bunch of revelations were added, and the second edition was published in 1835, and that included the Lectures on Faith, as they were called. And the Lectures on Faith were summarily removed from the 1921 Book of Doctrine and Covenants. When they were added, they became Doctrine and Covenants, the covenants being Joseph's personal revelations. And Joseph would deliver these personal revelations, having a scribe sitting in the room with him and say, "Thus saith the Lord," and then he would say, "We need a printing press," or whatever the case may be. So those were all of his revelations included into the Book of Doctrine and Covenants. And it's gone through multiple iterations. For some reason, the subsequent prophets and apostles have thought that it was necessary to change the words of God as they fell out of Joseph's mouth. Thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of times. So now we get to my favorite of all of the Mormon canon. That is the Pearl of Great Price. Now, this is not really often discussed. You think Mormons, do you think in the Book of Mormon, gold plates, Joseph Smith? The Pearl of Great Price is just a few little tiny books. The Book of Moses, the Book of Abraham, and then we have the Joseph Smith translation of the Bible, one book, that's Matthew, and then we have the Joseph Smith history, and then Articles of Faith that was added in like the 1980s. So the Book of Moses and the Book of Abraham, that's the very exciting part of Mormon canon, and not a lot of people know this, but those two books are where all of the wacky Mormon beliefs come from. You know, God came from the planet Kolob, and these really weird doctrine that not a whole lot of people know, but they may see it as, you know, kind of outsiders. That's kind of the more, the deeper Mormon doctrine. So that's what we're discussing today, is the Book of Abraham and the Book of Moses. Here we go. The books of Abraham and Moses. Joseph Smith, let's talk about where these books came from. Joseph Smith in 1835 purchased ancient Egyptian papyri and 4 mummies from an antiquities dealer for $2,500. That's about $57,000 in 2017 money. So this dealer, he was an antiquities dealer. There was a lot of Egyptian archaeology going on. He would cross the Atlantic, pick up a whole bunch of antiquities, and then bring them all back to the United States, and he would go and exhibit them and sell them to whoever would be willing to purchase them. So he happened to meet Joseph Smith, who, brought forward this book that was written in Reformed Egyptian and said, hey, this guy might be willing to buy these old papyri and these mummies. So he approached Joseph Smith, and Joseph said, this is one of the most amazing things I've ever seen, and he decided to mortgage a fair amount of church property in order to afford to buy this papyri and mummies. And we can argue about whether or not that was a good investment, but everything we're talking about today came from that. So it's kind of exciting. So once Joseph had this ancient Egyptian papyri, and these are real papyri, he got to translating once again. And then in 1842, he brought out what was known as the Book of Abraham. The translation was complete, and he published it through the church's periodical, The Times and Seasons. Here we have the printing up on the right side. Sorry about the camera. On the right side, that's where the Book of Abraham was actually published in the Times and Seasons, the church's own periodical. They were excited about this. He purchased them in 1835. The Mormons had been chased out of multiple towns by the time 1842 rolled around. People were excited. They wanted to know what was in this ancient papyri because Joseph Smith claimed that it was written by the hand of Father Abraham. What an incredible discovery, right? So people, of course, were skeptical. Strong delusions! So as soon as it came out, basically, the Book of Abraham was added to the lexicon of the wacky delusions that the religious fanatics known as the Mormons believed in. So in this pamphlet, it's kind of hard to read here, but we have damnable heresies, the 19th century theocracy, Blarney, revelry, lechery, carnality, gaiety, demonology, trickery, felony, disloyalty, audacity, reverie. There's a lot to point out about this. And of course we have down here in the bottom. This is kind of important. It says pass through the mill, and there's the square and the compass in the bottom as well. So this was a Masonic periodical that published this derision of the Book of Abraham against Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith became a Mason in 1842, and he had a lot of run-ins with Masons who were not very happy with him for founding the Masonic Lodge in Nauvoo under false pretenses. That's a whole separate discussion, but it is just interesting to point out this was a Masonic periodical that published this. And it's from these books of Abraham and Moses that Mormons derive a lot of their nuanced theology, which departs from standard Christianity. So, would you guys like to play a game with us? Okay.
No jigsaw.
No jigsaw. Let's try and test our skills of translation against Joseph Smith. How does that sound?
Yeah.
So we're going to study a few of the papyrus from which Joseph translated the Book of Abraham, and we're going to see how our skills of translation and interpretation match up against his skills of interpretation. Now, this actually may be a problem with the projector. I wonder, could somebody get up and move the projector a tiny bit to the side? Braden, can you grab one of these chairs and move it just so that people can see those pictures?
There he comes.
I'm not tall enough.
Want to go a little this way or the other way?
That way, yeah, this way.
Okay.
So we need to see the image, and then I'm going to read the options that we have over here so everybody can hear. Okay, so here we have, yeah, that looks good. Actually, let's see. Okay, perfect, yeah. Okay, so question. All right, multiple choice, A, B, C, D. What does this Egyptian papyrus depict? What scene are we depicting here? Is it A, Abraham sacrificing Isaac? All right. Is it B, the mummification and burial ceremony? How about C, is it a Satanist sacrificing an overgrown infant? Or is it D, sacrifice of Abraham by idolatrous gods Elkanah, Libnah, Mamakra, and Korash?
Last one.
Last one? Okay. You know what?
I'm leaning toward B.
B?
Yeah.
B? All right. So we got B. We got to split with B and D.
He's feather tickling.
I'm guessing the organs are going.
Yeah.
Picking out big jars.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, if anyone has seen the Mummy movies, you might recognize a lot of the things that are depicted here. Well, that's because those movies are very loosely based on some of the Egyptian theology. Well, this is This is a funerary text. So, the correct answers, I should say this, there are two correct answers to every question because there's Joseph's version and modern Egyptologist's version. So, correct answer we have B is modern Egyptologists recognize this is a standard funerary scroll. This is a person being embalmed, the canoptic jars with their organs in them. This is standard. These papyri scrolls are everywhere. But Joseph Smith's translation was that Abraham went through a similar ritual as Abraham did with his son Isaac. So this is Abraham actually being sacrificed by the idolatrous gods of Elkanah, Libnah, Machmara, and Korash. So, yeah, I think we got that. We got that. All right, next one is on the same one, but it's focused on this right here. Everybody see the red arrow on the number 12? Okay, so the question is, what is represented by figure 12? And to streamline this a little bit, let's just clap when we land on the answer that we like. Just one clap. Bam. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay, so is number 12, I'm sorry. Rocky Yang, signifying the expanse or the firmament over our heads, or Shamau Hig, or the heavens? That's answer A. Anyone like that? No. We got what, one vote? Okay. Is this B, the water that the crocodile swims in? That's about 60-70%. All right, is this C, is it the hardwood floor of the Egyptian embalming room? Nobody? Come on. Come on. It's not Mormonism if there are some anachronisms in here. All right, is it D, layers of rock signifying the foundation upon which the Egyptian empire was built? Ooh, a few claps. Correct answers. A is Joseph Smith's answer. That is Rao Ki Yang, signifying the expanse or the firmament over our heads, Shao Mao Hig, or the heavens. Yes. So, well done. That's a correct answer. The actual answer from Egyptologists today, no, that's just the water the crocodile swimming in. Not everything has to be esoteric and have these deeper meanings. All right, next one. This is an important one. Okay, we have this central figure that we're looking at here. This is where this red circle is around. Now, we're going to see what is depicted in this right here. Options are, A, is this baboons admiring the mighty god Kumunu? Votes? Okay. Is it B, agents K and J fighting a 10-foot tall crocodile alien before he commandeers a UFO? Yeah! All right, we got a couple votes. Okay. Is this Kolob, the residence of God? A couple. And is this Aleister Crowley summoning a demon? Okay, okay. I think D wins it out. I'm sorry, this is, according to modern Egyptologists, this is A. This is baboons admiring the mighty god Kumunu. And just to let you know, Kumun or Kumunu is thought to be the god of the source of the Nile River. Of course, the Nile River would flood every season and bring in silt and resources and fertilize the crops. Joseph Smith said that this is indeed Kolob, and that Kolob is the residence of God. So, central figure. Sure, you're a 19th century occult practitioner. Why not? That can be God. Cool. All right. Next and final, what is depicted here in facsimile number 2? So the last picture is this massive circular sigil. That was the center that we were looking at up here. This is the bottom right corner, okay? So, is this A, right here, a mutant duck swan staring at a wind chime? One vote, okay. Is it a fishing lure? Okay, a couple. Is it God sitting on his throne revealing key words of the priesthood? There's some key words in there. And is it the fertility god Min with a massive erection? All right, votes came in C and D. Yeah, it's C and D. So Joseph thought that this was God sitting on the throne revealing key words of the priesthood. But modern Egyptologists call this Min. This is a fertility god who has a massive erection.
Where's the erection?
I believe that is our phallus that we're looking at. Little spray marks. I don't know because I'm not an Egyptologist, and I don't claim to know the real answers because I'm not crazy.
I think it's upside
upside down.
I feel like that whole thing looks upside down.
Yeah.
It's actually not. No, so it's not upside down. There's reflected images. If you see the picture of the whole sigil, it's there are
okay.
multiple boxes kind of around. I think one of the other slides have it. We can go back to that later if you guys would like. So that's Joseph Smith's translation method. He looks into a hat. He says, "I think it means this," and there we go. We're all winners here. All right, for part 2 of this presentation, I'm going to send it over to my partner, Braden.
So, Bryce is more like, he has like all of the knowledge and the more like sources, and mine's more like experiential. It was more just the lived experience, the things I heard about Satan in church, my mom telling me, so that's what we're going to get into.
And what you preached on your mission, too.
Yes, as a missionary. So in the book of Abraham and the book of Moses, they basically, it talks a lot about our pre-existence, where we were before we came here. And basically, there's God, and he had 2 sons. He had Jesus, and he had Lucifer, as he was known then. And they were brothers, and God presented a plan to them or he asked them to create a plan so that they could, for all of these people, all of the spirit children, so we're all up there in this one big cloud, I guess, hanging out. But God and Jesus were like Jesus and Lucifer were God's 2 sons, and Jesus however, was his favorite. And he gave them the opportunity to each present a plan, and Jesus' plan was let them go down, let them live, and make whatever choices they want, have free will, have free agency, have the ability to make choices for themselves. But in order to come back to be together as a family, to be back with God, they need to do these things, and I will go down as a sacrifice so that whatever mistakes they made, then I will pay for them with my life, and then we can all come back, be one big happy family. And however, Lucifer's plan was take away the free will, make them make the right choices, or they don't really have a choice. They just all live correctly, basically as robots, essentially human robots. And then when we die, whenever that time came, we'd all go back and we'd be together. And God chose Jesus' plan, and then there was essentially a war in heaven. Sorry, I'm skipping ahead. So then Lucifer rebelled because he was mad that his choice wasn't accepted, and there was a war. There was people that that wanted to follow Lucifer's plan, and there was people that wanted to follow Jesus' plan. And essentially, there was a third of those people chose to follow Lucifer, and the rest chose to stay with Jesus. And just make sure I'm covering everything. So yeah, Jesus became humanity's savior with his plan. Satan was cast to hell, as well as all of the people that were sided with him. Cast down to hell. And those people that were sided with him, that were kind of fence-sitters, they were allowed into heaven in 1978. Do you want to give them more?
Yeah.
No. what you're referring to?
Essentially what happened, according to the book of Abraham, we have what is known as the curse of Cain, which is a skin of blackness. It is a curse to make the people loathsome and unappealing to the more white, righteous, and delightsome followers of Jesus. So people who had the curse of the black skin, or the curse of Cain, they were known as fence sitters who had a hard time deciding whether they wanted to go with Jesus or with Lucifer during the first great battle. So finally in 1978, the church decided to give priesthood to African Americans, and now they can get into heaven. Whereas every time before that, they were not allowed.
Black Lives Matter.
As of 1978, they do. Yes.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Some of the racism that's a part of the LDS Church history. So this is what I was referring to. This is the plan of salvation. This is very central to Mormon doctrine and what missionaries teach. They really push this because this is they also call it the plan of happiness.
Yeah, and if you're going to have something called by, an acronym, Plan of Salvation, maybe pick a little bit better of an acronym.
Nobody wants to be a part of the P.O.S. So yeah, this is what I was referring to. This is the premortal existence. So that's where we all lived, and we were all together. We're spirits essentially, and we lived with Heavenly Father. And we were all picked our families according to some people. We're like, hey, I want to. When we go down there, let's be together. Like they basically form teams, I guess. But what happens is when we go to Earth, there's this veil of forgetfulness, this veil that you pass through, and that's why when we're babies we don't know anything. According to this, is that we forget, and we're supposed to forget so that we don't know that we're supposed to. So we don't have a perfect knowledge of God and Jesus and all of this, so that we have still that free will. Because if we had the knowledge, then it would be easier to make the right choices, right? So on Earth. And then we die. And when we die, based on kind of what type of people we were and how we lived according to the Mormon doctrine and rules, we go to this spirit area. Our body goes to the grave, but our spirit goes here, and we're kind of divided just in two groups. There's the mostly good and then the mostly bad, I guess. So it's paradise, and then it's a little hard to read, but spirit prison is what it says here.
You don't want to be that person that drank one too many cups of coffee and you just missed the threshold for spirit paradise.
Even a sip.
One extra
That's
sip.
on a tab.
Yeah, just go to bed earlier. But then, so we hang out there. Should I get into the...
Yeah, definitely.
So we basically hang out here until
until the resurrection, essentially.
Yeah.
Until when Jesus comes back, the rapture happens, and then all of the people are resurrected in their seven. When each of the seven trumps are blown, and then that essentially calls.
Trumpets.
It says the Doctrine and Covenants. Go listen to my Book of Mormon podcast. It says Trump very explicitly. It's a great omen, I'm telling you. When those trumps go, the seals are broken. That's when the resurrection happens. And then Satan is bound for 1,000 years. And we'll talk about that soon. But that's when people are resurrected onto the earthly state, and we have 1,000 years of probation.
So basically everyone, for free, whether you were good or bad, when Jesus returns, our spirits are reunited with our bodies, but our bodies are perfect. And that's something that, at least in the Mormon mindset, it's like, God's so loving, he gives everybody... For free, he gives everybody, that's just the bonus. That's just thrown in. Everybody gets their body back. Everybody, no matter how you were, like, that's just, you're welcome.
Unless you're a Satan worshiper. You went and followed Satan down to hell.
Yeah, I don't know. That's fuzzy in this. And then we're judged. And Mormon, so there's the celestial kingdom, which is the kingdom of the sun, right? So that's the brightest. There's the terrestrial kingdom, which Bryce informed me is actually not a real word. Telestial, excuse me.
Yeah, telestial.
Terrestrial kingdom, that's the kingdom of the moon. So it's still bright, but it's not as bright. And that's their idea. And then there's the telestial, which is the kingdom of the stars. And telestial, I guess, is a made-up word.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, of course, terrestrial, that's real. And so if you were amazing and followed all of the church's rules and commandments, you went to the celestial kingdom. If you lived that way your entire life, like you don't give up, you don't stop. Terrestrial is like, at least according to Mormon doctrine, it's pretty similar to Earth, which is pretty good in my opinion. So you go here if, like, I feel like most people in this room, maybe if you believe in Satan, I don't know what Mormons think. Where
Yeah, I
you would
don't
go.
know. I don't really
I'm
know.
not sure. But Mormons believe in Satan too.
Let's just say this is a room of outliers. We can't judge where
Yeah.
everybody in this room is going to go after we die.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'd love to be that arbiter, but I can't.
Telestial, I guess, is a little worse if you're a little more intentionally bad.
Yeah, that's where Hitler goes.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
Telestial.
So even Hitler doesn't go to the worst place.
Trump would qualify for that, right?
Yeah. Trump. Yeah.
Depending.
Why doesn't
Depending on your Mormon perspective.
Well, the thing is like where you land in these three kingdoms is much more based on the boxes that you've checked than it is the type of person you are. And it's kind of understood implicitly that if you are doing all of the ordinances, you're going to the temple once a month and doing all the sacred ordinances and the handshakes and everything, then you're probably a good person. So somebody like a Trump or somebody like a Hitler could... I'm not saying that to equate. I had to stop myself. I'm sorry. An evil person who goes to the temple and does all of their ordinances, but is just an absolutely terrible person, can make it to the celestial kingdom. But we just hope that they eventually will repent of everything that they've done, that will qualify them properly for the celestial. However, good people, just genuinely, your neighbor who's the nicest person in the world who doesn't believe in God, sorry, you're out. You're not celestial material. And yeah, go ahead and tell us about outer darkness.
So now, if you're someone who had a better knowledge of the Mormon Church and you believe that it was true, and you maybe received a spiritual confirmation that this was true, did all of the things, went to the temple, you were married in the temple, you went to the temple regularly and worshipped in those way, and then, because of one reason or another decided to stop believing or denied that, then you would go to outer darkness. And even then, I'm not sure if I qualify, because I'm one of those that did all of that stuff and then left. I don't know if I go here. Maybe Bryce has more insight on that, but what I think about is some of the early, when Joseph Smith formed the church, there were people that followed him, that helped him, other men that were in high leadership positions, and then for various reasons left or denied the church or decided it wasn't true and started actually even telling others that it wasn't true. I think that's maybe where this doctrine kind of came from, is like, you're like Joseph being mad at them and trying to make them feel worse, or like, I don't know, somehow repent and come back, or just...
Or it was also reserved for people who would not only apostatize, but go start their own religion, believing the Book of Mormon, not following Joseph. So if you had a competing claim to being the prophet, you're headed for outer darkness.
Yeah. So if you're one of the many sects that branch off of Mormon, the mainstream Mormon religion, then you would go here.
Yeah, and that's why they say, like, the Brighamite, that's what the Salt Lake City LDS Church is, the Brighamite sect, because after Joseph's death there were a lot of different competing claims to who had the proper authority, but the Brighamite sect claims that all of the other sects are in apostasy. All the other sects claim that Brighamite LDS Church is in apostasy. That's a harsh label that's slapped on somebody or on an institution or on a book or on whatever material to make your average chapel attending Mormon fear and not engage with any information that might be presented.
So depending on which crazy old man's teachings you believe, you could go here or there. So
This all sounds like a lot of work. Could I just opt for the outer darkness?
I'll save you a seat, brother.
So this is the plan of salvation, and people believe that if they go to the celestial kingdom, they will be with their families for eternity. And that is why they get married in the temple. That seals them after this life. In Mormons' belief is most people that get married, they are married for this life only. Till death do us part. Mormons believe, however, if you're married in the temple, then you are sealed. You have made a promise with God, with your relationship, that you will be there, and therefore all of your children, all of your descendants will be with you forever as well, as long as they do the same.
Something that's not included in this infographic, just a really quick digression, sorry. The Celestial Kingdom is also split into 3 separate kingdoms. There's a lot less known about them than there is about the actual full plan of salvation. But essentially, the only people who can get up to the highest level of the Celestial Kingdom, so you have the 3rd degree and then the 3rd degree, the 33rd degree of Mormon heaven, that's who gets their planets, that's who gets, you can only get there by being a man who has all of the keys and who has married 3 or more wives. So that's the only way that you can get to the utmost 33rd degree and have your planet.
Yeah. So Mormons say they denounce polygamy now, but they actually still believe in it as a practice, but just only after this life.
Also, yeah, this is actually, there's a lot of information,
Yes.
especially for the rest of Braden's side. There's a lot of information. I see one question. Let's go ahead and do questions during this. Let's make this a conversation, not a lecture. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yeah, sure.
Cool, yeah. Question?
So this is trivial, but just curious. Do the wedding vows for marriage in a Mormon temple not include the line "till death us part"?
No, they don't. They, I don't know the word. I can't remember the words exactly, even though I was
Time and eternity. Right?
Yeah, it's for time and all eternity.
Time and
That's
eternity.
right. And they don't say "I do." They say "yes," because they ask a question: do you agree to, meet these, follow these covenants? Which is like, anyway, I don't want to get into all that. Yeah, sorry.
Is it true that, because chances are people you care about are going to be spread all over through those.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it true that you can visit the lower ones? You can't visit up, but if you want to go like hang out in the other ones, you can slum for a while.
I think that's only. Yeah, I think only Celestial Kingdom can visit.
Can visit
Down. And you're right.
Actually, I was under the impression terrestrial can go down. You can visit down,
Oh,
but
okay.
not up, like you were saying, Bevan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So it's like you're up there, but then on the weekend you're like, come
Yeah.
down here, maybe here. Save a little here on Saturday night.
Living in Beverly Hills. Yeah.
So,
In case you want to like take a weekend in south side of Detroit or something. Question as well?
If I go to the outer darkness, do I get to keep the magic underwear?
You only get the magic underwear in the Celestial Kingdom. So yeah, I know, right? It's some people's kinks. I don't want to yuck anyone's yum, but I don't know. I feel like they're kind of weird.
sorry, back there.
So, unlike the pre-spirit existence in the kingdoms, you still have like a body. This is like a physical like planet that you're on, and you have an existence.
Yeah.
So, and there you have like a perfect body. But what does perfect mean? Like,
Ooh,
can
great
you die?
question.
Can
Yeah.
you be destroyed if I launch myself into the sun? Like around the terrestrial kingdom? Like what happens?
You'll go live with the Quakers on the sun. That's deep Mormon theology as well.
Like, Quakers live on the sun?
Sorry, Quakers live on the moon, but there are people on the sun.
Oh, no.
Listen to my podcast, people.
Take us down the rabbit hole.
We are just peering at the edge. We're not diving all the way down. So yeah, that's the way it's kind of understood. I don't know if there's actual doctrine backing this up, but essentially, when you die, you ascend to spirit paradise or prison, and then when you're reunited with your body, that's when you are essentially resurrected in your form. But then I think it's kind of understood that you age backwards towards your prime. And eventually everybody gets to their prime. So babies that die age to their prime, old people who die, or people who die maimed, missing a limb or something, they slowly age back, and then everybody kind of lands at like 20 years old because that's the best time to be alive, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I don't know. Any more to say?
Yeah. Well, just kind of around that. So you're like, what does perfect mean? It's like, people that are born with disabilities. Maybe they love their disability. It's like, but sometimes, at least in a lot of Mormons and Mormon culture, the parents or the person with the disability themselves, they love this because they look at this and they say, oh, like, if they struggle with their disability, they're like, oh, I'll be perfect again. Like someday I will be made whole, or my brain will function properly, or my limbs will function properly, and they look forward to this day, and it's kind of tragic, to be honest. Because a part of them can't maybe fully accept, when they believe this, they can't really fully accept who they are. Sorry.
What was the question about Satan? Where is Satan in this?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So
We're going to get into the
Yeah,
later
sorry,
part
I
of
got a
Satan,
little too much
but
into this.
he is the ruler of outer darkness.
Oh.
So what happened? The whole battle in heaven when God was deciding, and if you want to actually go back a couple of slides, that actually shows the scriptures that are related to all of this that describe what's going on. But the premortal decision that was made, that God decided between Satan's plan of human robots and Jesus' plan of free will with cancer and with everything else, that decision was made in the premortal existence, and that is when Satan defected from our premortal family and took a third of the hosts of heaven down to outer darkness with him, where he actually became Satan at that time, because prior to that he was Lucifer, the morning star. He became Satan when he was damned, basically.
Yep.
So yeah, do you want to read? I think the previous slide. There's actually a couple of snippets from the books of Moses and Abraham in here.
Do you want to read this one as well, or?
Yeah, this is a good one.
Okay. So in Moses it says, "And I, the Lord God, spake unto Moses, saying, that Satan, whom thou hast commanded in the name of mine only begotten," that's Jesus, "is the same which was from the beginning. And he came before me, saying, Behold, here am I, send me. I will be thy son, and I will redeem all mankind, that one soul shall not be lost. And surely I will do it. Wherefore, give me thine honor."
So that's the crucial point that a lot of people use in order to disparage Lucifer versus Jesus, because in the next the next slide it has Jesus' plan, and it says, "Let me go to be the Savior." Do you want to read that?
Yeah, he says, sorry.
Yeah, there we go.
"And the Lord said, Whom shall I send? And one answered like unto the Son of Man, Here am I, send me. And another answered and said, Here am I, send me. And the Lord said, I will send the first. And the second," that's Lucifer at this time, "was angry and kept not his first estate." So that's the pre-existence. "And at that day many followed after him."
So the important takeaway is that Jesus basically said that, "Let me go and all of the glory will be thine, Lord," whereas Satan said, "Give me your glory." So Lucifer, he wasn't Satan yet. So Lucifer wanted the glory of being God if he just saves everybody through a plan of no free will of human robots. Whereas Jesus said, "Go and send me to die on the cross, then I will give all of the glory to you, Father." So, and out of an act of selfishness and wanting to inflict pain at the cost of free will, God decided to go with Jesus' plan instead of Lucifer's. So, yeah, and that's when Lucifer was damned to outer darkness and made Satan.
Can I ask who the many that went with him at the end of that paragraph are?
So they're all
Good question.
demons, I guess. That's-
Minions?
Yeah, familiar spirits, whatever. Yeah.
So you have demons.
So if Jesus and Satan are brothers, do they have the same mother or do they have different mothers?
Don't even get me started on
Well,
Heavenly Mother.
to go back to something I said earlier, this is a perfect slide for it. The celestial kingdom, only men with the priesthood with all the keys, with more than 3 wives, can get to the 3rd level of the celestial kingdom, where they become gods and create their own planets. Our God that created Earth was once a human being on the planet nearest the star Kolob. He, in order to ascend to the 33rd degree of the celestial kingdom, he had to marry more than one wife, as per Mormon doctrine. That is the overriding rules that we all have to follow. So when you start talking about our Heavenly Mother, you have to start talking about our Heavenly Mothers. And that's a subject that Mormons do not talk about, that Mormonism doesn't take a clear stance on, because the way that they say it is people say, "God damn it," all the time, and people take the Lord's name in vain all the time. They don't want Heavenly Mother's name dragged through the mud. So, but it's also like, well, if we talk about Heavenly Mother, we're talking about Heavenly Mothers. We all in this room may come from a different Heavenly Mother. We may all have the same Heavenly maternity. So there's no clear lines. That's just stuff that's all up in the air.
Yeah, they don't talk about it.
Well, I'm taking Heavenly Mother's name in vain now.
Yeah.
You guys might want to start wrapping it up.
Okay.
Sorry, let's.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah,
sorry.
perfect. Sorry.
You've got a few minutes, so take your time.
Okay.
So Satan's role in our lives, he's the adversary, and this is what I grew up with, going to church camps where it's like, this music you guys listen to today, like that's all Satan, if it's Linkin Park or, Papa Roach, this was late 90s, early 2000s. So like kids would like go like breaking their CDs or throwing their CDs in the garbage and like, music they liked, but someone told them it was devil music and then they'd get home from the camp and then they'd buy the CD again. Or get it off of Napster.
There we go.
It's not that much different from Christianity.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, like Mormonism was definitely part of the Satanic Panic. Like, they were a big part of it.
Satan rules the water. This one affected me a lot. As a kid growing up, in the summer, we have a family cabin and we could never swim on Sunday. Even though we were at the lake, it was like we just be holed up indoors on Sunday because you don't play, you don't do a lot of stuff, but Satan rules the water, and therefore we didn't play in the water on Sunday. And then as a missionary, when I was a missionary for the church, it's a mission rule that you can't swim at all, not just on Sunday, but never. Like you're not even supposed to go on boats, so you can't even take a ferry. Well, I don't know about missionaries here if they can go to Whidbey Island or not.
I'm sure they
Or if they have
can.
to drive, or if they have to drive around.
Just driving through the water.
Yeah. It's a short ferry.
Yeah,
But-
there's a whole story behind that. We can get into that in Q&A
Yeah.
if you guys want to.
And then how to, so like, people who have left the Mormon church or who no longer believe or are having doubts, they're told, well, that's Satan trying to deceive you. He can forge the spirit to make you think you feel the spirit or think you're making a right choice when you're actually not. And so then it's like, well, how do I know the difference? You can, apparently that you can know if someone is a good, like a righteous person, or if it's someone who's actually of the devil by shaking their hand. If you can't shake their hand, if your hand passes through them, then it's a demon.
Yeah, that makes
Yep.
sense.
That's supernatural, it's true.
So far, everyone here, no one's a demon. Sorry. And I was.
Sure, sign of the name.
There are multiple scripture and references to antichrists.
This is probably way too big for us to get into,
Yeah.
but the Book of Mormon has a ton of antichrists.
So just anecdotally, when I was serving as a missionary, I served in South Korea, and I was just on the street. I think I was talking to somebody, and I was pretty new. And then suddenly a guy, I think I went to talk to somebody, and he once he saw me, realized who I was, he started screaming, "Antichrist, Antichrist, Antichrist," and ran away. And it was so shocking. I was like a 19-year-old, blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid, fresh out of high school essentially, and someone screaming that I'm the Antichrist. It was just really weird for me. We won't get into more. Let's try to. So we talked a little bit about this during the plan of salvation, but Satan was basically in probation. He was tied by chains. He was held captive when he got cast out for a millennium. And when that time is up, then he will be free. And
that's actually after rapture happens. So when we're all resurrected, when the seals are broken, we're resurrected. That's when Satan goes for 1,000-year probation, has no power over Earth.
Oh right, there's the resurrection, then it's 1,000 years. And then there's the war. Yeah, sorry. And anything else I'm missing?
How much time do we have?
So we're starting to be tempted now in this day and age.
Okay, perfect. So we'll
yeah.
just get past this, I think.
So in the so people call this the end of days, a lot of Christians, and so now we're starting to be tempted, and that's why things are getting worse and society's devolving apparently. So that explains that in their minds. And then there's this great and final battle. Hulk is here, and you got Scarlett Johansson, and all these awesome robots. And we're all gonna fight against.
Ultimate Showdown.
Yeah, it's gonna.
It's
gonna be
Ultimate
epic.
Destiny.
You guys should get seats. It's gonna be epic.
Yeah, and something to point out too is because all of the followers of Jesus have resurrected bodies during this great final battle, and all of the legions of Satan's followers, they don't have bodies. those of us who do have bodies, we're all here in this room, we're all going to ascend to one of the 3 levels of the kingdom. We are going to win the great battle because apparently, the details don't make sense. It's just, just trust us. Those who have bodies have more power than those who are just spirits. So, yeah, we're going to win.
And a lot of this stuff isn't talked about a lot, so I actually learned about the battle recently from you. So I didn't even really know.
Is that because parts are kept secret, kind of, until you get to a certain level?
It's just like they don't talk about the weird stuff because they know it's weird. They can tell, and so they just, like the Heavenly Mothers. It's like that's really the core of why we don't talk about it, is because, but nobody really knows except for the church leaders, and that's just kind of hidden and it's shoved away.
Actually, we're gonna I think we have one more slide to get to, and then we'll get to Q&A. Just to keep conscious of time. So. Why don't we go to Q&A and then I'll read the conclusion at the end of that.
Okay.
So go ahead. Sorry, you were first. I gotta hit you first.
No worries. My curiosity though is the final battle. Everyone's resurrected. What about those who went to the celestial plane and they're off doing their own thing? Do they have to come back?
They're gonna be like lieutenants. They're gonna be like the generals on the front lines, whereas God and Jesus are gonna be like the ultimate generals.
And will their mortals be helping or?
Sure. Sure. Why not?
Well, see,
the thing is, and this touches on what you were asking about. This is really deep Mormon doctrine. People, Mormons say, do not cast your pearls before swine. We are casting pearls in I'm sorry, according to Mormon theology, everybody in this room, including ourselves, are swine here. Because if you're not a part of the in-group, we have to keep a certain amount of information reserved so that you'll come to our temples and give us your tithing money, and then we'll tell you about the deeper theology. But there are not very many hard answers when you get into what we're talking about. There's a lot of, well, we'll find out after we die, or you just got to pray about that, and God will answer. Sorry, your question.
I'm kind of going along with that. I don't understand how some of you know more than others. Isn't everything written down in the books, in all those books?
Yeah, it's a lot.
So
I guess they just don't read them.
But some Christians know more about Christianity than other Christians.
Well, and there's also theologians who extrapolate, take little nuggets of information and cobble it together with other scriptures, cherry-picking information, and then they construct their own theology, which we're going to talk about really soon at the end of this presentation. So there's the Mormon theology that exists, or the Mormon doctrine that exists within the Canon, and then there are the Mormon theologians who have taken those to extremes, and they can get pretty wacky. I think you're next.
So you were talking about how the God that they revere was a human who ascended to godhood. Is there any discussion about the original God, or was there ever an original God?
It's called an infinite regression. It just goes forever.
Turtles all the way down.
Oh, I was just gonna, in relation to Angel's question, like if you actually do read the stuff that Joseph Smith wrote, it's very hard to read and make any sense out of it, because for a couple of reasons. Like he wrote because he was pretending or believed that, who knows which, that it was the word of God. He presented things in a very sort of faux King James style, which frequently is hard to parse and sometimes makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
So
open to interpretation.
So a lot of people, even if they do try to read it, it just sounds like gibberish.
I wasn't even given half
really
of
hard
until after I was baptized.
to make sense of it.
Well, and to go beyond that too, there have been subsequent apostles and prophets who have taken that religious theological garble that some people might call it and tried to clarify and made a greater mess of his revelations, because Joseph was a synthesizer, but he didn't always have a very clean way of translating his thoughts and beliefs onto paper, especially when he's saying, "Thus saith the Lord, this is the kingdoms of God, and he was translating the Bible at the same time. So it's very messy, and it's been made more messy ever since Joseph's death. So. Oh, sorry, you've been asking.
So how do they kind of rectify that
Lucifer rules water, and yet they use it to seal the family and to do the baptism.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's purified water. It's blessed.
Wow.
You're saying a blessing in it. You have your hand to the square. You're doing the necessary things in order to bless the water. And actually, just really quickly, the story of why Satan rules the water. Joseph Smith was in Missouri and was traveling back to Kirtland in 1831, maybe 32. And him and a few of the missionaries were on boats, on canoes, headed back, and they got caught on some branches and they capsized, and a couple of them almost drowned. Joseph Smith delivered a revelation that Satan rules the water.
The next day, right?
The next day, yes. And then he said that we don't have enough money to afford carriage rides for everybody, so all you guys are taking the canoes, but me and Sidney Rigdon, we're going back in a carriage. So thus Satan rules the water, and for 180 years, missionaries haven't been able to go swimming during their mission.
So you were saying that water is blessed to kind of purify it?
I guess not explicitly. I don't ever remember like purification rituals or anything like that.
No, oils are blessed for blessing purposes, but water's never blessed. But they baptize in water, and they instead of wine, like most Christian denominations, they serve water with their sacrament as their communion. Yeah, bread and water instead of bread and wine.
My follow-up question is like, what's the range on that? Is it a range or is it a cone? Like,
you just take the prophet up in the International Space Station and just have him cast a blessing over the whole planet, and Satan no longer rules any of the water. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think anything that happens on the church premise, in a baptismal font or at the sacrament in the chapel, that's the Lord's house. So I think Mormons just assume that they're protected from water there.
Satan
From
can't get in.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't have the body to open the door, so he just can't get in there.
I think that's we're pretty tapped out on time, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's do the conclusion here. So basically, Mormonism's Satan is unique compared to most Christianities. Obviously, it sounds like a lot of you had never heard this information before, except maybe somebody who may have been Mormon in a prior life. The Mormon Satan is a little bit different. There's a little nuance to it. Lucifer was the literal brother of Jesus. He wanted us all to reach the celestial kingdom, and his totalitarian plan didn't allow for free will, but it also didn't include murder, rape, theft, cancer, parasites, flesh-eating bacteria, or any pain or suffering of any kind. We exchanged all of those things so that we could make free will decisions. He was condemned to rule outer darkness, and he took a third of the God's Spirit children with him, and he will return after his probation and immediately be defeated by Jesus' zombie army. So in Mormonism, the adversary rules our celestial sphere. This is apparent with all of the evil music, all the pornography, all the wars, natural disasters, all the abortion that's killing millions of babies out there. The truth of the matter is, it's a big and beautiful world out there. Okay? There's lots of amazing and wonderful things that happen every single day. There's also a lot of dark and ugly and evil things that happen out there. But when we're indoctrinated with a pure black and white framework of viewing everything as good being God's and bad being that of the adversary, we kind of lose sight of all of the beautiful hues and shades that the world is really constructed with. And when anything that a person is unfamiliar with or opposed to can be labeled with something simplistically as that's satanic or that's from the adversary, it forces them into a position of complacency and pacification with their body of knowledge as they know it today, which that stifles broadening of horizons, and it stops learning. It counters everything that we are here to do as humans, is to gain more knowledge, to view the world through new perspectives, and to gain a more beautiful appreciation of this beautiful world we find ourselves in. We must seek to understand the world as much as possible and hold fast to that which is honest, true, chaste, benevolent, virtuous, of good report, or praiseworthy. So, I am Bryce Blankenagel. This is Braden Hamm. Thank you all so much for coming out. This is really awesome. Quick announcement. For some reason this is not displaying, of course, because that would be far too convenient. You should be able to see it, but can't. I'm sorry. We're actually doing a new podcast called the Glass Box Podcast. And what we're doing is reading through missionary tracts or through lectures, through deep Mormon theologies, and we are exploring the history and the modern interpretations of super deep Mormon doctrine, like everything that we've talked about today. So if you like that, check out my podcast, Naked Mormonism, and my Book of Mormon, and then coming out on iTunes, Stitcher, and everywhere else pretty soon, you and I are going to be on the Glassbox podcast. So once again, thank you, everybody.